On the 5th of June 2017, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Egypt, and the Maldives completely and abruptly severed all ties with Qatar. Borders were closed, Qatar Airways flights had to be rerouted, ports were ordered not to receive Qatari ships, banks were advised not to do business with Qatari nationals or in Qatari riyals, and Qataris visiting or living in these other countries were given 2 weeks' notice to get out. Qatar was effectively being blockaded, and would continue to be until January 2021. So why did this all happen? And how did Qatar deal with being blockaded for almost 4 years? Qatar is a rich Persian Gulf monarchy with an outstretched role on the world stage, whose largest city is now dominated by futuristic skyscrapers, having virtually sprung out of nowhere over the past few decades, in large part thanks to oil money, and having become a huge worldwide stopover thanks to the global reach of their national airline. Okay, I realize just how little that narrows things down, but the important thing to know about this emirate of 2 million is how it plays on the international stage. What might make this 4-year blockade seem even more strange at first is how Qatar, alongside Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates, with the further addition of Kuwait and Oman, are all part of an organization known as the Gulf Cooperation Council. The GCC is a political and economic union between these 6 Persian Gulf countries, featuring a customs union, a common market, a joint military force, and even freedom of movement among citizens. Disputes between Qatar and its Gulf neighbors, however, first started to bubble long before the crisis broke out. Under the rule of Emir Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, Qatar sought to wiggle itself out from under Saudi Arabia's direct influence. Sheikh Hamad did this in many different ways, not least of which involving the establishment of relations with the 2 eye countries that you do not mention around Saudi Arabia, Israel and Iran. The South Pars North Dome field in the middle of the Persian Gulf, by far the largest natural gas field in the world, is shared between Qatar and Iran. Meanwhile, Qatar also hosts the Al Udeid Air Base, hosting the largest American presence in the Middle East, and maintaining a close alliance with the United States to further offset Saudi influence. All this led to Saudi Arabia withdrawing their ambassador from 2002 to 2008 in an attempt to curb these actions, which worked about as well as you would expect trying to make someone not do stuff you don't like by simply not talking to them. Poorly. I mean extremely poorly. However, many countries around the world, including the United States itself, started to accuse Qatar of supporting, specific groups of people with guns, including funding charities with ties to certain groups across the region, and allowing these financiers to operate within their borders. While Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani stated that Qatar does not support these groups and is committed to fighting the wife of Osiris long term, the Arab Spring spawned a particular power play between the Gulf nations, with the Qatari government supporting many of the revolutionary groups across the region, and Saudi Arabia and co., well, not. With tensions seemingly brewing, many feared that all this, in the worst case scenario, could even result in a military conflict within the Gulf. With the Riyadh summit in May 2017, the then US president gave strong support for the Saudis in their efforts fighting groups in countries allied with Iran and the Muslim Brotherhood, the latter being one group Qatar has been accused of funding, and which many of their fellow Gulf states view as an existential threat to their monarchies. This support might have pushed many other Sunni governments in the region to take a stance with the Saudis against Qatar, perhaps reminded of the ostracism a Gulf nation could experience were they to defy Saudi Arabia.
The orb remembers all.
That very next month, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and Bahrain, alongside Egypt, the Tobruk-based government in Libya, and the Maldives, a close business partner of the Emirates, all cut diplomatic ties with Qatar and closed their borders to Qatari nationals. Qatar was given a list of 13 demands to end the embargo, not least including shutting down the controversial state-owned media corporation Al Jazeera, downscaling their relations with Iran, shutting down a Turkish military base within their borders, and to no longer interfere in other countries' affairs. Kuwait and Oman, however, did not break ties, with the former trying to serve as a mediator amid this dispute. Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, in what I can only describe as peak pettiness, even briefly had the idea to dig a canal on their side of the border, effectively turning the peninsula into an island. Shout out to Ticket to Know if you want to learn more about that plan. While the canal remained within the realm of proposals, Qatar refused to meet these demands, complaining that the blockade violated international law, and established new trade routes through Turkey and Iran to meet their citizens' basic needs. Around 80% of their food came through their Gulf neighbors, mostly traveling across the border with Saudi Arabia. In the days just after relations were cut, shipments of fruits and vegetables were delivered by plane from Iran and to a lesser extent from Turkey. Nevertheless, the emirate quickly turned to domestic food production, including importing thousands of cows. Airlines based in the country's embargoing Qatar, including the likes of Emirates, Etihad, Fly Dubai, Saudia, Air Arabia, and Gulf Air, all suspended their flights to and from Qatar, and furthermore, Qatar Airways was barred from entering these countries' airspaces. Oman Airways, meanwhile, played a large role in evacuating many of the 100,000 foreign nationals unable to return home. While Qatar Airways could no longer continue its flights to these other countries, they did still continue their routes to Europe and Africa, just over Iranian airspace instead. As Qatar previously lacked any deep-water ports, roughly 85% of all sea cargo headed toward the country went through Dubai's Jebel Ali port, with cargo offloaded from larger ships and transferred to smaller feeder ships heading toward Qatar. With that very much not an option anymore, Maersk Line and the Swiss-owned MSC, yes I know, landlocked, switched their operations to the ports of Salalah and Sohar in Oman. China's COSCO and Hong Kong's OOCL, meanwhile, suspended services to Qatar altogether. Meanwhile, Taiwan's Evergreen Marine got stuck in the Suez Canal. No, I'm kidding, they also suspended services. Luckily, the country was able to open the deepwater Hamad port just 3 months into the embargo. With the situation seemingly going nowhere, things finally changed in January 2021 in the historic Saudi village of Al Lula, when Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and Bahrain finally lifted their embargo. That previous month, 59% of Emiratis polled said they wanted an end to the blockade. Experts seem to agree that the end of this embargo was largely motivated by the outcome of the 2020 US presidential election, with increasing pushes from the incumbent administration to get everything sorted out. In a cruel twist of irony, the embargo might have actually done more harm to Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and Bahrain, who all lost access to a small yet profitable market. While Qatar remains a GCC member, this doesn't mean tensions have necessarily subsided, as Kuwait, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia all have significant Shia populations, and have accused Iran of stoking sectarian tensions. Meanwhile, embargoing Qatar definitely does not seem to have weakened their desire to continue their relations with Iran.